The shout went up from the inner court before the trumpets finished their call. Heads turned toward the platform as the Queen Mother stepped through the gate, rain-dark hair braided tight, eyes sweeping the crowd for the source of the noise. In the lamplight, she saw a boy in a crown standing by the pillar, oil still wet on his hair, the guard in tight ranks with shields lifted, and a priest holding the covenant like a verdict. Athaliah's voice cut through the sound, hard, incredulous. Treason! Treason! Steel rasped in scabbards. The captains looked to the priest. He raised his hand first, not his voice, and the courtyard froze. 6 years earlier, there had been fire and flight. King Ahaziah of Judah went north to Jezreel and died when Jehu broke the house of Ahab. Word reached Jerusalem in scraps. Ahaziah dead, royal cousins dead, the northern queen thrown from a window, the old ties gone in a week. Athaliah, daughter of Ahab and Jezebel, and mother of the dead king, knew what chaos did to dynasties. She moved first. She ordered every prince with a claim to David's throne killed. Swords went room to room. Names went silent. One child lived because an aunt moved faster than the blades. Jehosheba, sister to the dead king and wife to the high priest Jehoiada, took the infant Joash and his nurse and ran to the temple. The complex had chambers and storerooms where a child could be hidden and tended. It was not the queen's ground. Athaliah ruled from the palace. Behind cedar doors, fed and taught by quiet hands, the boy grew into a rumor the city did not dare repeat. People lowered their eyes when soldiers passed the courts. Somewhere in the house of the Lord, a life the queen meant to erase kept breathing. The years marked themselves by thinner festivals and new altars. Baal had a priest in Jerusalem, Matan, and a house. High places stayed busy. Athaliah's rule looked firm to anyone who believed years make things true. In the temple, Jehoiada counted those he could trust, captains of the guard, the karates, the runners at the gates. He sent messages on Sabbaths when shifts changed and movement could pass as routine, and the answers came back in the only safe language, men showing up when asked. They met in a chamber and swore on the covenant. Jehoiada brought out the boy so they could see that the rumor had a face. Fear went to resolve. The plan used the rhythm of the Sabbath watch. 1/3 of the guard at the palace, 1/3 at the Surgate, 1/3 at the gate behind the guard. Those off duty would enter the courts armed and form a ring around the child. Weapons would be drawn from the south side of the house to the north, hand to hand, so that any line of sight to the boy ran into bronze and iron. Jehoiada opened a chest. Inside were the spears and shields David had dedicated to the Lord, heirlooms kept for a day when symbols had to become tools. The captains took them with a care that looked like reverence and felt like preparation. No one asked for more time. Time had already been spent. In the 7th year, on the appointed Sabbath, the captains moved their men into place. The city thought it was a change of watch. Inside the courts, the signal sounded. Jehoiada brought out the boy and set the crown on his head. He placed the testimony in the child's hands, the written law that says what a king is and is not. He anointed him. The people clapped and shouted, the sound rebounding off stone and timber. Horns answered horns. "Long live the king," they cried, not as a wish, but as a decision. Athaliah heard it and came to see. She stepped through the gate and saw the circle of guards, the child at the pillar where kings stood, the priest beside him, and officers at attention with David's weapons bright on their forearms. She tore her robe and screamed the word again, twice. Jehoiada did not let the holy court turn into a killing ground. He told the captains to take her out between the ranks and strike any man who tried to follow. "Bring her out by the way of the horses," he said. The men understood both pieces of the order, not here and not slow. They opened a lane through shields and helms. Sword points tracked her as she moved. Athaliah walked the path no ruler wanted, past faces that would not meet her eyes. She had taken a throne by killing a generation. She left it by a back gate. At the horse gate, away from the altar and the crowd, soldiers struck her down. The queen who had ruled Judah 6 years died outside, where hooves and wheels scored the ground. Inside, order kept moving. Jehoiada made a covenant between the Lord, the king, and the people, that they would be the Lord's, and that the king would rule under that law. Then he led them to Baal's house. They pulled it down, smashed the altars, and killed Matan the priest of Baal at the place where he had served. Gatekeepers went back over the temple. The guard returned to stations with David's weapons on their shoulders like a promise kept. They formed a procession, captains, guard, and people, and went from temple to palace by the upper gate. They set the boy on the royal throne. He was 7, small in the chair, and steady in the way children get, when the room is all adults and everyone has run out of choices. Jehoiada stood near him like a wall. The city breathed out. The text says it plain. Jerusalem was quiet after they had slain Athaliah with the sword at the king's house. Quiet meant no more midnight purges, no more orders handed down through fear, no more priest of Baal taking up space in the capital. The reckoning did not erase the first day. The memory of the order to kill the royal sons lived in the faces of women who had washed blood from thresholds and in the empty chairs at household tables. It lived in the boy who grew behind a door with soft voices outside and a nurse keeping him from windows. It lived in the way the guard had held shields that morning in ranks so tight a bird could not have flown between them. Justice does not make the past neat. It makes the future possible. Jehoiada's hand stayed visible for years. He taught the young king, gathered money to repair the temple, and kept the covenant at the center of the court. He was not king, but he remembered the day the crown rested on a child's head beside a pillar while the city decided what law meant. Athaliah's name remained as a warning, how a queen seized a throne by blood, built altars that fed other fires, and died at a gate meant for horses, not for queens. The geography of that morning stayed stamped on minds. The South Court packed with men on duty when they should have been home, the glint of old bronze in sunlight, the smear of oil on a boy's hairline, the rasp in the queen's voice when she realized the crowd did not move for her, the measured command from a priest who had kept a secret for 6 years and finally spoke so everyone could hear. The story needed no flourish. It needed sequence and names. When the trumpets fell quiet and the boy king sat on David's seat, Jerusalem heard something it had not heard in years, its own heartbeat instead of footsteps of fear. The city had been held by a ruler who treated power as its own law. In one morning, law answered back. A child who should have been a line on a casualty list became a person again. The house that kept the covenant turned back into the center of life. Guards went to ordinary watches, priests sang, families went home. History kept the summary. Athaliah reigned 6 years. In the 7th, she was killed at the horse gate by order of the priest after the rightful heir was anointed. Baal's house came down. The people rejoiced. Details hang on that frame, but the frame is enough. The crown did not pass because a bigger sword appeared. It passed because a city remembered the difference between a throne stolen and a throne granted under law, and because a handful of people hid a child until the day he could stand in daylight. If you stand in an old city and say her name out loud, you can still hear the echo of her cry, "Treason, run along stone." It was the last time her voice set the terms. After that, the story belonged to the boy, the priest, and the people who chose quiet over a reign built on fear. Thank you for listening to Divine Crime. Subscribe for more true stories from the most dangerous book ever written.